Hey everyone, Painful Mass here. I'm gonna try to speak loudly. I don't know if it's picking this up, but apparently I live right next to where all of these leaf blowers in the city go, and they're blowing leaves around right outside my window. I think you can probably hear me though. So sorry about the delay in posting this, but I've been traveling all over for the holidays, and now I think I'm finally settled back into a nice routine. Today we're going to look at the Forer effect. I wanted to do the Semmelweis effect because that one actually gets away from the two that we've done so far, but this one seemed necessary based on comments I've received about prophecy and proof based on it. So unfortunately, it is basically just a special case of confirmation bias. It is also known as the Barnum effect. The definition of this effect is the tendency of people to interpret general statements as being accurate for them personally. The effect, or the way this is most commonly observed is by giving a large group of people a horoscope or personality test. Usually every person will be given the same one without them knowing this fact. To make it really fun, they are sometimes given the personality or horoscope of Hitler or Charles Manson or someone. And then once they read through the description, they're asked to rate how well it matches them. And almost universally, people will think that it applies to them. Many people believe that it is incredibly accurate. The effect has been repeated, controlling for lots of different influences. For instance, if the people believe the descriptions are about them or that it comes from a trustworthy authority, then the effect is magnified. This is rather not surprising, though. All this really says is that if we give people reason to believe, then this causes confirmation bias and this makes the effect work better. Remember, at this point, it doesn't really matter what causes the effect because it is consistently observed to happen. But the leading theories on what causes it make sense. If a statement is sufficiently general, then the brain will interpret it in such a way as to apply to them. It will especially work in cases where the person hearing the statement is trying to see if it applies or not. This works so well and consistently that fortune tellers or mind readers or people that speak to the dead aren't afraid to do it in front of live audiences or on national television. You have to be pretty confident in this effect to do this. And yes, several of them admit that this is all they are doing. Let's now look at some interesting situations that apply to some of the comments I've received on this bias series. Some Christians love to say that the evidence that Christianity is true is that God gave prophecies to recognize the Messiah. Jesus then fulfilled all of these prophecies, and that is all we need for proof. Let's assume for a moment that the Bible wasn't changed so that Jesus fulfills the prophecies, and still we have the problem that he doesn't actually fulfill the prophecies, as can be seen by the many situations presented in Prof. MTH's series on this. I'll link to that. Again, we'll just assume for the moment that we don't know this though. We want to know if Jesus fulfills the prophecies from a factual historical perspective. This would be our evidence. But the non-mythical historical Jesus is well known by historians and biblical scholars to be an apocalyptic Jewish teacher. At some point, it probably dawned on him that maybe he was the Messiah. Not that all the Gospels give this impression, but let's just assume that for a moment. Then he looked at what the scriptures actually say, and he found a bunch of general statements that seem to apply to him. Does this setup sound familiar? That's right, Jesus' own belief that he was the Messiah was probably a result of the Forer effect. This is a reason that not all Jews recognize Jesus as the Messiah. He actually doesn't fulfill the prophecies from any sort of objective standpoint. The only people who think he does are the people who already believe he was the Messiah. This is clearly a case of the Forer effect at work. When you read the New Testament, you can almost see the authors at work in their reinterpretation of ancient scriptures. Did Jesus fulfill this one? Well, not really, but he was the Messiah, so it really must mean this, and on it goes. Now we've entered the bias of rationalization, which we've already talked about. But I just found it interesting to think about why Jesus would have thought that he himself was a Messiah in terms of the Forer effect for my example of the Forer effect, instead of giving examples of how it might affect you. So thanks for watching.